Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Down South Salvation Podcast. For today's special guest, we have Alexander Roussopoulos. Correct me if I'm.
Plus.
I gave it my best shot. Unfortunately, as an American, I'm terrible at pronouncing names. So,
That was great. That was great.
good. Well, I'm glad. I'm glad I didn't butcher it. So. But before we jump into his story and what he's got going on, I want to say a prayer for us and for the knowledge of God's creation, since we're going to be talking about his PhD in science and his journey from atheism. Almighty and everlasting God, you made the universe with all its marvelous order, its atoms, worlds, and galaxies, and the infinite complexity of living creatures. Grant that, as we probe the mysteries of your creation, we may come to know you more truly and more surely fulfill our role in your eternal purpose. In the name of Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
So, Alexander, I guess there's no better place to start than the beginning. Why don't you kind of walk us through your faith journey and how you ended up doing a PhD in science as a Christian?
Yeah, it's a long story. I guess starting with my background, I grew up in an atheist household. Had some kind of anti-theist views growing up. Yeah, I'd say to people like as a teenager, like, "Oh, who was going to church in the 21st century?" Now I'm going, every week. So, how the tables turn, and it really, there's a lot of parts of the story, sort of very. I hate to do a rundown, but the way it went is you can hone in on different bits as you see fit. Sort of started becoming more open to, say, deist ideas before I went to university, and also just cultural Christianity, and through just my views changing, becoming conservative, and Christian ideas started sounding more interesting to me. And then when I went to university, made some Christian friends, thought they were really nice and really interesting, and they sort of thought about what they believed in, which, yeah, obvious now, but I grew up thinking various misconceptions and stereotypes about them. And they invited me to events, like out evangelistic events, like in the UK at universities. They have this thing called Events Week, where you just have a week of talks, so you invite friends and stuff to talks about faith and the Bible aimed at students. I found some of them like quite profound. Like it really talks about the big things. Although I didn't become a Christian yet, I still found the idea of believing in the supernatural more so strange, and having beliefs like that as the center of your worldview. Like, so I don't know how you could believe that. And got out of touch with them when COVID hit. So about 2 years went by, went my own way. Got just uni life. Well, just during COVID, working on my studies, trying to get involved in clubs and like sports clubs and societies. And then out of the blue, 2 years later, one of my Christian friends just messaged me like, "Hi, Alex, you want to go to Events Week this year with me?" I was like, completely out of nowhere. I hadn't been in touch with them for ages. I was like, "Oh, yeah, sure." I'd been through a rough time as well at that point. So, now I know it was literally a godsend. Yeah. And they brought me along. I took it more seriously and started even going to church a bit afterwards, but wasn't converted yet. And sort of thought, maybe I could take, I don't have to believe in it. I could just take the values, believe in the not believe in the supernatural stuff, because that's a bit weird, and then go my own way. Didn't really have a great fourth and final year of my undergrad, so I went to Events Week again to reminisce. Thought I would sneak in, just watch from the back. And I got instantly recognised by someone I met at the previous one. So they asked me how it's been, and I said, "Oh, so I really couldn't bring myself to believe." But in sort of the short of it, and then I remember a conversation with his brother, like, who got me to take it seriously. Like, there's nothing like this, Alex. Like, this is the only place you're gonna get fulfillment, freedom. There's nothing like this, so really please do consider it. So I took it more seriously, went to read the Bible with this theology student, a good friend, went to courses, like evangelistic courses. I actually went to that guy's wedding a couple of weeks ago. So it's also, yeah. And then eventually I can't pinpoint the moment of when the conversion was. But sometime during them I just started to absorb it by osmosis. And eventually, the last time we met, just at dinner at his house, he asked me, "All right, Alex, so what do you think?" I was like, "Well, about what? About the conversation we've just been having?" He's like, "No, no, about God's faith, just everything." And I had to, stop, think "All right, what do I actually think?" Because I just, still be wrestling internally, and I just said what I thought. Was like, actually, I do believe Jesus walks on the earth, died for me, and rose again. And even though I didn't, I was like, whoa, I actually said this out loud. And that's when I pinpoint, when I became a Christian. So that was about 2 years ago now. That was a week before graduating from my undergrad at Durham University. By then, I'd already applied to the PhD and also, so I spent the summer figuring out everything, faith, and then went to, my PhD here at Nottingham. Has a little stint where I considered going Eastern Orthodox. So I became a Christian at a charismatic non-denominational church. Considered maybe Eastern Orthodoxy, because I'm quarter Greek, half Russian, so it's in my heritage. But eventually settled in to, we'll talk about why I wasn't convinced by Eastern Orthodoxy, and it settled into a Reformed Anglican parish where I'm there now, still on the PCC, that's the Parochial Church Council. And yeah, so I haven't looked back.
All right, love to hear it. So, okay, so now what? So what is you're doing a PhD program, right? A doctorate. So what is that going to be in? Like what science?
Yeah, good question. So I'm researching gravitational waves using, and specifically data analysis on that area using machine learning. So there's a lot to unpack. Gravitational waves first are essentially, maybe if you might have seen Christopher Nolan's film Interstellar, or heard of relativity somehow. So this idea that gravity is the curvature of space-time. And the idea is that if you have dense enough objects spiraling in towards each other, the sort of gravitational distortion will be so great that they release gravitational waves that we can detect. I mean, lots of events in space emit gravitational waves, but these emit ones that we can detect. I mean, and though it's quite hard, like Einstein thought, okay, there'll be, these gravitational waves, they're real, but we'll never detect them. So that's not, yeah. But he didn't anticipate LIGO, which is basically a pair of two pairs of L-shaped laser arms in space built to detect these distortions in space-time from traveling gravitational waves, which are smaller than an atom's width. So yeah, it's quite an incredible feat. And yeah, and I work on the data analysis, so I'm not on the detection side itself. Rather, once they've taken the data, I'm working with my supervisor on the program to take in the data and then infer information from the data. So you get data on the wave and say, all right, what were the masses of the black holes? How far away were they? What position were they?
Okay, so I'm sorry, I shouldn't say you're the numbers guy, basically.
Oh yeah, I mean I'm in the department of maths, so
Okay.
yes, yeah, I will accept numbers guy all day long. Yeah.
Okay, well, you and my wife would get along, then I can't. Math is not my subject for sure. That's all I gotta say. Math is not my subject. It was not my subject in grade school. It was not my subject in college. It's just not my subject. I'm an
That's right.
English and
Yeah.
history kind of guy, so.
Yeah. I kind of wish I did more of that though, like history and the arts and humanities.
It's never too late, bro. You're still breathing, aren't you? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, no, I've been trying to read more recently. Yeah.
I got you. So, okay. Well, now I've got a lot of questions to ask you because obviously I don't know how much you keep up with American Christianity, with the fact you live in the UK, but typically in America, there's usually two perceived sides within Christianity. There's the ones that are nominally Christian and are cool with science, right? Just straight up cool with mainstream science, no issues. And then there's the ones who are like real fundamentalist. And this I'm not saying this is all there is, but I'm just saying this is what the appearance to the outside world typically is. And they do not like modern science at all. They are not cool with it. They do not believe it typically. They see it as completely antithetical to Christianity. So, what with you being in a scientific field and being I would say, more recently converted Christian, how do you see the relationship between science and faith? What?
Yeah, there's a lot to say. I mean, yeah, I get what you mean because this is what I grew up thinking as well. Like, I just thought, oh, Christians are flat earthers and all, and this and that, which was like complete, yeah. Firstly, it doesn't even apply to what you call fundamentalists. They say most of them would say the Earth is a globe. So yeah, and also it just isn't the case in the UK. It's not quite the same. And the way like this is something I at first when I converted, I was like, okay, how do I deal with this? Because it seems like if I believe, should I believe the Bible? Should I believe just the Bible or just science? Can I really synthesize them? But I would say the big seeming source of conflict isn't really from the science itself, but from history as well. Like a lot of new atheist polemics take a read is basically interpretation of history to you and use and just everyone. I mean, not them. I'm not going to say only atheists. Almost everyone who doesn't like actively resist this temptation uses history as a weapon to like say, look, the other side have been bad in history, and my side have been the heroes. And just learning about the role of Christianity in the development of science, like of course we know Isaac Newton. I mean, now we could debate whether he was a real Orthodox Christian or not, but he was a theist. Like he believed in the Lord God intervening, not intervening, but actively interested in our world, and for that science follows from this. Like in this Principia, there's this quote mind phrase from him saying that the suns and planets and celestial bodies can only come from an intelligent thinker. There's also another page later. Interestingly, what I find more interesting is that he says we have to, metaphysical necessity isn't we can't just use that because the argument, I have to recall this correctly, that Jesus' lordship is God's lordship over creation is what makes variety, and he claims that metaphysical necessity makes no variety, and by that I mean metaphysical necessity, like can you just logic your way to physical results? Like a lot of philosophers in the ancient world thought, like you could just think about matter and think, oh, an object with no forces on it will stop. Of course, we know now that's not true. But you don't have to use the idea that why do we use experiments? Like we know now because it works. Yeah, we know in the 21st century they work, they deliver good results. But what's the motivation? And part of the motivation was that you can't just logic your way to think the laws of nature. You actually have to go out and test it.
Oh, okay.
And also,
I understand.
And also, like or strong views on original sin that affect that affects the mind. Also, were I'm no expert on this, but from what I've read, that for early natural philosophers, that Christian natural philosophers, that was a motivator to do experiments because our minds alone aren't enough to work out physics. We actually have to go out and do stuff. There's a lot I could say. Also, like learning, like young Earth creationism was not like, it wasn't dogmatically insisted on until fairly recently. Recently being the last century or so. Like Inspiring Philosophy and Dr. Garen Norland were very helpful sources. Were the big sources on this that helps me just contextualize the history of relationship between science and religion. So check them out for any viewers interested.
Yes, in all seriousness, check them out because I listen to them too. They're great. I love their channels. I love their content. They're awesome. If I ever get a chance, I will have both of them on here, but we'll see. I have to get a little bit more audience first before I can pull that off, I think.
I think it's definitely on the cards. I think they're great people. Just trusting God. Yeah.
So, in other words, you don't see any kind of real conflict between faith and science. At least, not science insofar as science is not being used as an alternative explanation for faith. Because there are some people who put their faith completely in science and just reject all supernatural possibilities whatsoever. And obviously, their interpretation of science would obviously be completely in conflict with any kind of faith because they are openly rejecting any kind of supernatural occurrences whatsoever. So they obviously couldn't hold their current interpretation of science and be religious because that just doesn't work.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because that was kind of me. And what really changed me was just thinking about what does science, what does natural science actually do? Like physics, chemistry, etc. Right. You have this idea about how the world works. You do stuff like experiments as you're using the things in the world, seeing how it acts normally. You repeat the tests 100 times or 1,000 times, a finite number of times. And then once you've done enough, you conclude, okay, it's works this so many times. So, and then, this is induction. It's works this so many times. It's not mathematical induction, but that's the principle. Like, if it happens this way, this so many times, we know we can just be safe. We can safely assume it happens like this every time. We can trust that general relativity applies near a star in not that way. Yeah, near a star. Yes, is one of the best theories we have. Like, even without going there and testing that general relativity works. And so, this is all, I agree, and I think it's a valid assumption you can make, but really comes from isn't something you can just get to from materialism. It's like you have to kind of make that assumption. And and also another thing, reason it comes from theistic principles. Like I keep saying natural philosopher because the word scientist is from the 19th century anyway, interestingly enough. So theistic natural philosophers, the reasoning was that because God doesn't change his mind, doesn't deceive, and his laws are his word stands forever, and he acts orderly and regularly. You can trust that when his workings, how he makes matter do it is the same way every way. That's confusing, as in, you can, once you've seen how stuff works about in your lab, you can assume it works outside the lab because it's the same God working on all that.
Right, I got you. I understand what you're saying. I mostly understand what you're saying. Okay, so now let's backtrack then. Let's move out of the science for a minute and let's backtrack to something you said earlier at the start. So you said you had considered. So you came to faith in a charismatic, non-denominational background, and you had considered Eastern Orthodoxy, but you ended up in a Reformed Anglican parish. So walk me through how, how did you come to faith in a charismatic, non-denominational background, and you had considered Eastern Orthodoxy, but you ended up in a Reformed Anglican parish. So walk me through how how all of that shifting happened. Like, why not choose Eastern Orthodoxy? You know, I mean, aside from the fact you live in the UK, so I feel like Anglicanism is probably like the default. But anyway, I might be wrong about that.
I mean, well, now you can't help it. You can't really trust every Church of England church near you. Let's just say that. Oh yeah, your viewers know what I mean. But yeah. I mean, I won't go into why I didn't stay in charismatic non-denominationalism. Now, I really now I have to. I don't want to throw shade. I really appreciate what they did. They were more missional than any church I've ever seen, and without them, I would probably wouldn't be having this discussion. So I'm not gonna uh, take cheap shots at them. I did find that like there were two modes. Like there was the morning service, which was more the excitement, like the focus was more in the preaching. And like I remember the first sermon series I saw was one on Genesis, which I was like fascinated by because like a lot of just hearing a lot of passages faithfully preached on like on Sodom and Gomorrah and the sacrifice of Isaac that I had heard used in atheist polemics, but found out they were completely done completely out of context and with key ideas taken out. But then there was the evening service where it was more about the excitement was more in worship and in praying in tongues, all that. And I found myself drawn more to. I'm not a charismatic by heart in theology. That's just not who I am. I'm more of a about the word. Yeah. Now for Eastern Orthodoxy, well, I mentioned it's in my ancestry. So 3/4 Eastern Orthodox lineage. So I had to read about it at some point, and then as I looked it up, I came across I would how charitable I should if I was being really charitable, I'd say I came across some apologetics online, which made me reconsider what just Protestantism. If I was being less charitable, I'd say I came across propaganda, because I mean that is what. Not to give it too bad a name, but yeah, I do not believe the claims they make about themselves to be true. Basically, like, and it wasn't that I was drawn to it because I liked all of it. Now, there is beauty in it and great depth. Like the first really good description of the Trinity that made me go, "Wow, theology is amazing." Was from a Greek Orthodox book, "The Orthodox Way" by Bishop Callistus Ware, and I thought, "Oh, this is so much deeper than what I've seen in these other church backgrounds I've been," which was like, the non-denominational church and some Baptist churches I went to early on. And so I considered that, and I also thought it's like, oh, I have to go because it seems like I'm in danger if I did get this ecclesial anxiety. I think I have to join this denomination or myself. To be fair, when I went to catechism, I did enroll on I wasn't a laugher. I went to a parish. I enrolled on catechism classes, and they did say it wasn't of the no salvation outside the church strain. It was very much they recognized the Christianity of evangelicals, which just said your relationship with God won't be the same if you're outside the Orthodox Church. We have the fullness here. There were some things that irked me, like kissing. I could not kiss an icon. That felt very strange, very weird, and initially I thought, oh, this is just me being weird. It's just something I have to put up with, and the idea that I didn't like how they avoid what they call rationalization of Reformed Christianity, which I think it's a worship of rationality. They wouldn't say it. They wouldn't say it's a worship of rationality. Not to put words in their mouth. I just saw it more as seeking understanding of what the scripture is saying. But I thought, oh, I just have to put up with all this because it's the one true church. And then it all fell apart when I saw another view. And speaking to Protestants in my life, who I knew, and including this theology student, he had studied theology and he had this similar experiences that just refers me to sources, looking at the history and I mean, icon veneration was like enough for me to say, oh, okay, so it's not an apostolic practice. And also, I met a PhD student studying patristics. I was like, oh yeah, it's not apostolic. It's like the Seventh Ecumenical Council that commands icon veneration was just not a non-apostolic council, and still forced this on everyone, despite earlier saints being against it. So I was like, okay, it's not as solid a structure. Eastern Orthodoxy is not as solid as it actually claims to be. So once that was the way I just, yeah. So like, okay, now I'm Protestant. I'm gonna go to that Anglican church I tried in my first week here at Nottingham, because I still wanted to be in the historical denomination, but in the evangelical one. And so that's where I went. And I actually I was drawn more to the reform side before. Okay, Anglicanism maybe has it. Then actually came to realize that my parish was quite a reformed parish. So people are going to say, "Oh, you're just reformed because you go to a reformed Anglican parish." No, it's just it's God's providence. God's providence, really.
I got you. Yeah, I had a very interesting. I actually went. It's funny because obviously there's no way for me to have planned this because I wouldn't have known you were going to bring up Eastern Orthodoxy. But in our small little town here in North Carolina, we actually do have an Eastern Orthodox church, and I actually went for Vespers last night, and I had a great time.
Oh yeah.
It was just very different. Very different.
Did you also feel like it's like a place, like an unchanged place in the changed world?
Oh yeah, no, I mean it had that real like solid rooted vibe to it, even though it was relatively new. Like it had started in like the early 2000s out of an old railway depot in town that was like an old historic building, and they fixed it up and were using it, and then they ended up buying an old Episcopal church from the diocese here in this part of the state, and they've been working on restoring that. They're still working on restoring that, but they've got it enough where they can use it at least. But yeah, it definitely had that sense of rootedness to it. I can tell you I have no intention of converting to Eastern Orthodoxy. But I did want to go check one out, just because I've never been to one, never had the opportunity to even go to one. So,
yeah,
and of course I don't have really an issue with the. I don't know that I would use the word veneration of icons. I wouldn't venerate an icon. I don't have an issue with people owning icons. I think that's probably okay. So I'm not quite as much. I'm not a Reformed Anglican as you are, because I'm assuming y'all wouldn't own. Yeah. Y'all wouldn't even probably own an icon, probably.
Not really.
Yeah.
Yeah, some Anglicans would, but we would agree, like they're not an essential part of Christianity.
They're not.
Like you're not, and we can discuss what the essentials are, but is not. How to put it? It's not as forced as the Seventh Ecumenical Council says. There's a softening recently. They don't enforce it this much, but the original phrasing is like, if you do not kiss the icons with adoration, let them be anathema.
Right.
It's like,
yeah, and that's pretty serious.
That's what really.
That's some pretty serious wording too. But like, to me, it's just a picture on a piece of wood. It's not like anything like super serious or frankly even fundamental to the faith. Anyone don't want to own an icon, just don't own an icon,
Yeah.
So, and I agree with you too, by the way. The Seventh Ecumenical Council was not terribly ecumenical at all.
Not really. Yeah.
Good thing we're Anglican and that doesn't bind to us anyway, so who cares?
Yep.
Speaking of different denominations and everything, let's talk a little bit, because you have a more boots on the ground perspective of this, and I've only heard about this through articles and different news sources. This concept of a quiet revival in the UK.
Yeah.
So Walk me through your experience as someone who lives in the UK and has lived in the UK during this time period. I think between like 2018 and 2024. What is your opinion of the revival that people keep talking about?
So, I mean, shall I? I'm going to give a spoiler. It's very anticlimactic. I think people really over exaggerate their interpretation. People jump the gun with interpretations. And I did this because well, heavy personal bias. To explain, yeah, I went through my story. I went from anti-theist to Christian. I initially thought, wow, what a story. There's a little bit of, a little bit of pride coming in, like, oh, have such a unique life story. I mean, now, I don't, all thanks to God, all glory be to God, of course. And when, some cultural Christian commentators will, make claims like, I don't think there's more, in some spaces, there is more of a openness to faith, and we're talking about the culturally Christian conservative sphere. Of course, that's sort of not really too surprising. But also, I will say, people are new atheist anti-theism has gone down in place of agnosticism. I will fight on that hill, definitely, and I and it. So I was very keen to think, oh, maybe I'm part. God seems to be doing something big, and I'm part of it. And there was these figures about young men overtaking women in religiosity, which, all right, spoiler alert, I think that's because of women becoming less religious. Not to say there aren't lots of male converts, but it's as a proportion. And then, so anyway, I digress. So I first learned about this quiet revival soon after it released in April. The headlines popped up a lot, and at this prayer meeting shared by just visited a sort of session where lots of independent evangelical churches united in a prayer evening. We need to see friends. Like, even if I'm in the Church of England, but I'm still very much in evangelical. Yeah, and this got brought up, mentioning that more and more young people seem to be open to faith, is what they said, and in general, spirituality, like hardline atheism, I will say, is going down now. You hear this brought up more and more at different services at other churches. I visited some evening services that brought this up a little bit. And they're always keen to bring up that it seems to be an increase in the percentage of young men going, which is exciting, because traditionally it's been the not young men have not been the what you think of as the church going demographic here. Now, I think having read a bit more into this, I will say in the UK, I think is partly due to immigration. This is going to sound so anticlimactic. I'm not saying God isn't working among us. I do know personal stories of people, young men, going for sharing my story, and young women as well. But in terms of the numbers, a lot of it is immigration. Like, a lot of the people from other countries and backgrounds who are Christian are coming to the UK, and especially just look at the figures in the Bible Society. You'll see one of the big announcements that church going is becoming more diverse. Like, a large proportion of 18 to 24-year-olds, of non-white backgrounds are church going, compared to what you might think. So, yeah, it's like something interesting conversation starter. But my message to Christians is, don't overblow the interpretation. Yeah.
I got you. So, do you think it's true though that there's been there's probably been a general increase of some sort in spirit, like you just said, there's been a general increase in openness to just spirituality in general, and just, I suppose, just by virtue of the fact that Christianity is a type of religion which would fall under general spirituality, there's been a bigger openness to Christianity. Do you feel like maybe it's concentrated more on the non-denominational end, or do you feel it's more on the traditional liturgical end as far as denominations go? Do you feel like it's maybe split 50-50?
I can't really answer. I mean, I know the charismatic churches. So there are charismatic Anglican parishes nearby, which is a whole other story. I do think in general the charismatic churches seem to be doing very well in terms of evangelizing, especially to young people, students. I'm bear in mind, like this, all spirituality also means new age. It means a lot of things. New age, Islam, even. So, I mean, I don't want to make any. I just want to be precise. Careful with claims I make, and it includes Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox backgrounds. And now, you hear different claims about Roman Catholicism. I don't actually know this. I mean, I know the situation in America more than I don't know if this is the same in Britain. I know in America, like, it gets apologists overblow it, but in terms of the figures, actually more people leave than go in. I wonder if it's the same in Britain, but I'm not sure. I will say what I'm interested in actually knowing. I don't know how they'll study this. What I'm interested in is if the percentage of Bible believing Christians in my age group in Gen Z. I wonder if within that, if those who are in that group are becoming like more zealous, like more interested in theology, more interested in seeking historical rootedness, more interested in regular Bible reading and like private religion, not just going to church. Not just going to church every week. You might even go to church every week and have some private devotional, like every once every week or something. But as in, like, I wonder if what the rate of prayer, Bible reading, devotional time each week is. I wonder how that's changing, because that's what I'm more interested in. But I don't know how they study this beyond polls, which will always contain a small percentage of the population.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I'd be kind of interested to know that too. I mean, obviously more in the American context than anything else. But my point is I feel like, and I could be totally wrong on this, the Generation Z who are becoming interested in Christianity, I would like to think are becoming more interested in traditional forms of Christianity over the more non-denominational rock concert types, because presumably that would be what if they grew up in the church, that would typically be what they would have grown up with, and they'd want to try something different. But I might be wrong about that, because I haven't seen that actually charted out either, so I don't, no one's broke that data down.
I think it's a really vocal online minority.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. Yeah, I mean, just going to meetings at my university's Christian Union, which has 100 people at regular meetings. So, I mean, sample size isn't perfect, but it's something. And, I mean, a lot. I mean, then you're going to have to ask, all right, do the charismatic Anglican parishes count as historically Protestant? Right. Which is where it's very easy to get offensive. Actually, very. All right. I will say, Reformation era theology. I'll say that. Whatever you say about, I don't want to be charismatic bashing.
Yeah.
But it's not what you think of when you think Calvin, Luther, Thomas Cranmer.
Right.
In terms of that, there's only one person who goes to the Christian Union meetings who's at a Reformed Anglican parish. That's me. One who goes to a Anglo-Catholic parish. So there's two ends of where I am. Also, there's two big extremes. Yeah.
Right. Which Anglicanism, frankly, might not be the best denomination to try and track this, because it's so varied.
I mean, yeah. Well, there's not really a Reformed presence. I mean, they're a Presbyterian church. There's not like a historical Presbyterian state. I mean, maybe I mean, there was the Presbyterian Church in England, but it got fused into the United Reformed Church. There's no Lutheran present, almost no Lutheran presence. So it's like Anglicanism is the only one there. Also, we've neglected a whole other. I mean, one subset we've completely neglected is liberal Protestantism, and I do see like more people my age going to those churches than to my church. And these are theologically some of these are theologically conservative people who are Christians but want the high church aesthetic.
Okay.
So that's a whole other thing.
So they're going for the smells and bells, so to speak.
That's what we say to them. I know it's a bit pejorative, but
I mean, I don't see it that way, but I mean, because I mean, like, you know, I grew up conservative Methodist, but I'm a smells and bells kind of guy. I like my incense, you know. I like my icons; they're cool. Like, but also I have certain things I'm not willing to compromise on either. So I guess that maybe makes me a little bit different than most people.
Maybe.
So, I'm trying to think of what else to ask you about this, because I'm just so fascinated by it. It's just very interesting to see the parallel trends and the different data points that come out of all of this. Frankly, it's interesting just to hear, you know, the difference in how y'all classify things in the UK versus how we classify things in the US. Because because I mean, I remember I used the word because I used the word evangelical in one of my questions when I talked to you about them before the call, and you said, that actually means something totally different here.
I mean, evangelical here does not carry the weight. I mean, even in America, it doesn't carry the weight that, like, on the historic theology sphere it has, where it means, like, explicitly non-historical, non-institutional, non-denominational, everything. You have figures, well, we all know who I'm talking about, saying evangelicals are not Protestants. That's it. And that does not exist here. I mean, firstly, the Lutherans would call themselves evangelical. You know who the first person in the English language to use the word evangelical was?
Not a clue.
Henry VIII, in his anti-Lutheran tracts. This was before the break from Rome, and when he was writing tracts against Luther, and the Pope declared him to be the defender of the faith. Funny knowing the history. But evangelical meant like Lutherans and Reformed as well, and Anglicans in the Reformation era. Evangelical is just Protestants, like historically Protestants. That's what it's always meant. And evangelical Anglican parishes. Now I'll say, we may have caught some, America sneezed on us a bit, and we caught some. Well, I'm not going to call them colds. You can recognize some things that you would think of as evangelical, like contemporary worship. Testimony. At my baptism in the Anglican Church, I told my testimony before I was baptized, which is something more that comes from the Jesus People movement, as I found out later. But and evangelical just is, it's especially in Germany, it means like the historic Lutheran Church. Here you can have evangelical Anglican churches, but also, independent evangelical churches. But you have to add independent as a qualifier to evangelical. So.
I got you. Yeah, I just found it fascinating. I just wanted to bring that up because I thought it was really interesting. Of course, I mean, I've never left. Well, no, that's not true. I have left the country once, and that was on a cruise to Mexico. But that was it. It's the only time I've ever left the United States. So, of course, my viewpoint's very American-centric. So, yeah.
Where in the US are you from? Like, general area?
I was born and raised in South Carolina, but I actually live in North Carolina now.
Okay, so that's in the American South.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, okay.
Yes.
I was wondering if the line between North and South Dakota was actually the dividing line. But no, yeah, because I asked.
Yeah.
Cause,
So what you're thinking of is the Mason-Dixon line. That is actually the dividing line between Maryland and Pennsylvania, which are
all right,
further north than we are.
interesting.
Of course, I would argue that based on internal migration between different states and based on the fact that DC is located in what we call the Tidewater, which is Virginia, Maryland area, and people just moving in from other states further north to that area, that the cultural divide between what is and is not the South, so to speak, has actually shifted. Um, but that is a contentious topic, and I'm not trying to get into that. That's a lot of
Because
yeah. There's a lot of background information to go with that.
yeah, yeah, I asked because just it's from what I hear. I mean, from the internet is like there, but my perception is that I think even with like online conversations with people, like it seems like the American South is like a whole other world from where I grew up. Where I grew up, by default, you're an atheist. You're non-religious. You're secular. You're an atheist. And then if unless proven otherwise, that's what you are. In the American South, it seems to be like by default, everyone is at least nominally a Christian, and yeah, it's expected that you be church going, unless proven otherwise. Is that
Yes,
is that is that reality?
pretty much. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, again, based on interstate migrations that have happened in the recent decades, that has begun to shift somewhat. Um, but generally speaking, if you're from a family that's grown up in the South pretty much their whole life and is just really immersed in the Southern lifestyle, you typically go to church. At least, at the bare minimum, the absolute minimum, Easter and Christmas. So, but yeah, I mean, we have the whole thing of there are people who go to church without actually believing what they're hearing, and then we have people who go to church because they actually believe what's being said at church, and everybody in between, pretty much. So yeah, I mean it's pretty much true. I mean, there's a reason we have a whole stretch of the South called the Bible Belt,
Yeah.
and frankly, it's the South is the South, meaning the southeast and part of the southwest of the country are pretty much exactly like that, and everywhere else it's pretty much the inverse. It's pretty much what you just described. Yeah, it's kind of wild actually when you really think about it, because it basically, I mean, for a very short period of time, it was two separate countries occupying the same space, because Civil War and everything. And I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
in a lot of ways, you can trace the history, trace it all the way to the Civil War and going forward, and you can actually see the different trends start to form. So I mean, in effect, it's like having two or three different countries that are all wearing a trench coat and calling themselves one country, and we just all kind of just agree to get along for the most part. So yeah, it's a very fascinating setup. I don't know that there's really anywhere else quite like it.
Yeah. It's fascinating. Yeah.
But yeah. So we are getting low on time. But I do have a few more questions I wanted to ask you.
Should we rapid fire them?
Yes. So, looking back at your experiences that you've had from being an atheist to coming into the faith, what advice would you give to someone who's wrestling with doubts or coming from a similar atheist agnostic background?
I mean, I just say read what's try and get a feel for what the scholarship actually says, particularly in like history, when it comes to the history of science and the history of religion. Not that they all say like Christians have always been perfect people in history. We invented everything. Every good comes from us, and everyone else was bad. No, history is complicated. It's not, shouldn't I do not. I'm not saying to people be triumphalistic about Christian history, but don't, you may have been raised with a lot of preconceptions. Please stress test them. Like, a lot of modern historians do not even believe in the Dark Ages as a category of time, and just engage with the arguments the Christians are making, and like be prepared to think, maybe I have decided that religion is not true, and then retrofitted my arguments to come to that conclusion. I did. That's what I did when I was coming across apologetics early on.
I got you. And my final question for you is pretty straightforward, I think, anyway, because this is one I ask everybody. Do you have any resources, books, YouTube channels, anything you'd recommend to anybody who's more interested in Christianity in general, in Reformed Anglicanism specifically?
Yeah, so the Bible, and yeah, I mean, as mentioned, for Christianity and science, actually, for general apologetics, Dr. Gavin Ortland and Michael Jones from Inspiring Philosophy are very, I find you'll find them very fascinating, even if you don't end up agreeing with everything they say. They're very fascinating. They can really bring scholarship in an accessible formats. And for Reformed Anglicanism, I say the Book of Common Prayer. Actually, just look up the 39 Articles of Faith. And yeah, the first 9 articles of religion, so the rule of faith of historic Anglicanism, and look up the Book of Common Prayer. Like, the daily office is, if you do it consistently, it just can be really edifying for your spiritual health. And there's so many books, like all right, I'll say on Genesis 1, a whole other thing, The Lost World of Genesis by John Walton is fascinating. Yeah, amazing. Quick, very brief summary. He has longer books for more detail, but it's a fascinating rundown of the sort of, and how ancient cultural context shows how we should read Genesis 1. And that's why, I'll spoil, I'll say what my view on Genesis 1 is. I interpret it as ancient cosmology and about God's. So it's not about material creation, rather the assigning of purpose to the world. Now, I do believe God created everything. There are, still passages in that affirm that. But I don't think, Genesis 1 is in contradiction with any other theories, just because I take an very agnostic view. Not that I'm agnostic. I mean, I do not think physical theories should come out of Genesis 1. If that makes sense.
I got you. So yeah, okay. I think I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Reads the book. Read the book. Read the book.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard of the book actually. I just haven't gotten around to getting a copy of it yet to read it.
It's quite readable actually. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually been stuck on I while I was on vacation last week, I started Evangelicals on the Canterbury Trail by Robert Webber. Yes, and I'm actually nearly done with it. Frankly, it's actually a very quick read for what it is. I thought it was going to go a lot slower, but it's actually been going pretty quick. So
amazing.
Yes, I will be doing a write-up on that at some point on my blog. So just everybody be on the lookout for that. Just dropping everybody a line on that. And if you're not subscribed to my blog, you should subscribe to my blog. Like, seriously, guys, come on, please. I need more Substack subscribers. But okay, I mean, that's all the questions I had for you. And just like with every other guest, I open it up for you to ask me anything you might want to ask me here at the end.
I just
And if you don't have anything to ask, that's fine too.
Yeah, I see. What? So you mentioned you were formerly Methodists.
Yes.
Yeah. What's your? What's how do you?
So, right.
How's that change? Very
Um,
brief rundown.
right, yes. Well, really
I mean, it's
not much.
quite a
So,
question for the end. So
yeah. I mean, the way I see not much has really changed. I mean, I still definitely have a Wesleyan soteriology. Um, I I actually had this whole conversation, not on stream or anything, but just through email with Reverend Daniel Hickson down in Louisiana. He was in Louisiana. He moved somewhere else now, but he's in the Anglican Church of North America, and he actually came from the United Methodist Church to the Anglican Church of North America, which I actually did an episode with him too, a little bit earlier on. So his whole story's in that. But me and him were having this conversation because I kind of had the thought that you're probably thinking, like, well, doesn't the 39 articles like clearly endorse straight up Calvinism? And me and him kind of had a discussion about it, and I kind of ended up reaching the conclusion he did that no, that's not necessarily true, because even Wesley believed in predestination, just not necessarily the same way Calvin believed in predestination. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. I mean, I like to hold space for the fact that maybe someone could convince me otherwise, but at the moment, nothing's really changed. It's just I really came to the Anglican tradition looking for something more liturgical as far as worship style goes, and I found it. I mean, I don't see any reason to change anything else. At least no one's been able to convince me so far to change anything else. So,
just you wait.
See, that's funny you say that, because I actually went to a Reformed Anglican parish while I was on vacation on Sunday, and yeah, I gotta say, nice people. Not really convinced of Calvinism.
That's all right. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll have, yeah, we can agree to disagree there.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Well, I'm gonna say a prayer for the mission of the church, and we'll wrap it up. But before I do that, though, I want to thank you for coming on, and because I know it's late for you. Obviously, you're in England.
My pleasure. My pleasure. I mean, I'd probably be doom scrolling anyway, otherwise. So it's actually great.
I got you. Well, it's nice to see that the doom scrolling crosses borders. I doom scroll a lot too. It's a problem, genuinely.
Lord of mercy.
Yes. All right. Ever living God, whose will it is that all should come to you through your Son, Jesus Christ, inspire our witness to him, that all may know the power of his forgiveness and the hope of his resurrection, who lives and reigns with you in the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Down South Salvation Podcast. I hope you found our discussion insightful and engaging. If you enjoyed the show, please consider liking this episode and sharing it with your friends and family. It really helps me reach more listeners like you. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode. You can also follow me on X, formerly Twitter, at DS Salvation, and Instagram at Down South Salvation for updates and more. For additional content and to stay updated, find me on YouTube, Substack, and all major podcast platforms at the Down South Salvation Podcast. Your support means the world to me, and I look forward to bringing you more exciting episodes soon. Until next time, stay blessed.